Well, in a nutshell, it was helping other organizations to figure out what mobile data collection tool would be the right one in their given situation, with their requirements, with their needs, and help them also to pilot them. I mean, NOMAD was born in 2009. At that time, mobile data collection tools were just picking up, so there were some advanced organizations that had already some experience with it, but there were many organizations around there not quite sure how to go on about it. So we did think, okay, this is now a good time to launch a service like this. The acronym is a little bit tricky because it stands for, I need to look it up myself, it's that bad. Humanitarian Operations Mobile Acquisition of Data.
So the great things that we were proud of justly with NOMAD was this database where we developed a lot of very smart technical requirements, allowing the user to do the comparison between two systems. The good thing that was speaking at the beginning of this project from my point of view was the fact that each mobile data collection solution provider were supposed to update the system into the database themselves. So in a certain way, it was a free collaborative approach to allow everyone again in a full transparency process to get the best solution based on their technical requirements.
Have a tool that would filter out, depending on your answers, which of the options would still be remaining in the pool. So what made it a little bit tricky was that as the years passed on, tools, solutions became very, very similar. So it was actually harder to come up with questions that would really filter them out. Now there were differences, but they are more nuanced, more in the fine details. So it wasn't something that you would find out through reading the specifications that were published by the solution providers or were communicated to us, but you really needed to test as well to get an idea, okay, what could be the difference and what would, how can I group them that it still makes sense to actually have a tool that actually filters?
I think one of the main success of NOMAD was to build a community around the tool and the platform. Because mainly via the workshops we organized in Paris and Amman, we really managed to gather a group of users that were, at this time, MDC was not as used as today. So many actors were using it on their side, but there was no real space to coordinate, to exchange experiences, etc. So I think mainly the Amman workshop was really interesting because we managed to gather solution providers that came to present their solution, including contribute to the funding of the workshop, and end user. And the location in Jordan was really interesting because it was one of the main areas of use of MDC by then. And we managed to connect field users that came with their concrete problems with solution providers that were getting feedback on how their solution was actually used. And I think it was a very productive moment for everybody.
Really liked a lot was our logo. I really thought the designer had done a great job in designing the logo.
I think the main challenge we had with NOMAD was the connection on the long range with solution providers, because we never really managed to find the proper incentive to get them to update information on the platform. It took us quite a lot of time to ask them to update, to get us feedback on what was going on their solution. And for them, I think the added value was not so clear, and the platform, although especially after we redesigned it, was pretty user-friendly, it was never really customized to their needs. Each solution has their specific tweaks. their type of user, etc. And it was really difficult to capture all this in a single database. So we tried to do it. I think the overall form was interesting for that, and it was a good entry point for people wanting to have a broad overview of the type of solutions that were available. But immediately they had to switch to detailed discussion with the providers, and I would even say to do their own benchmarking on platform, which some actors, including the NOMAD consortium members, were providing. But so we tried to encompass in a global platform information that was both detailed and an entry point, and it was difficult to maintain in the long range.
I think there was a lot of communication and pinging and re-pinging and trying to launch things. I mean, many people were interested really in getting it off the ground and support and express the interest, and we had very successful workshops as well. But then it seemed really hard to get enough commitment of other organizations to really pull it off as well. Or to get, I mean, there was this loose thing, okay, well, yeah, we would certainly want to help you to organize a new workshop, but then when it came concrete, it was very hard to actually get the traction.
Why NOMAD failed? For several reasons. The first one is obviously the funding. Even if the system that we tried to implement, that we started implementing, was great, we were facing a serious lack of resources. So when you develop this kind of database, you need to have a database officer, web developer, full-time, to ensure the maintenance, to track the solution provider, to update their solution in the database, and all of this was not really funded. So that's one of the reasons. The second one is that we were trying to provide a service at the end of the day on the top of the services. So you ask the database what is the solution corresponding to your technical requirements. Then the system gives you the 5 or the 10 top list of the solution corresponding to what you are looking for. And then iMMAP and CartONG were aiming to provide these services as advising services afterwards. And on that one, again, maybe our business model was not very well set up, but again, the lack of resources were the main reason. If you have enough funding, you can allocate the right resources to work on the project and deliver the services until the end. This is the main reason from my point of view.
Another of the reasons why we had difficulties to maintain NOMAD is that it was a side activity for both iMMAP and CartONG. So at the beginning, we had the grants to really kick off the service and then to build a sustainable platform. We invested some core funds from CartONG to revive the project around 2013, 2014. But at the same time, we were most of the time focused on implementing MDC activities and other IM or GIS activities, of course. And so while we were trying to capture learnings from these other activities to feed on NOMAD, I would say, research and learning activities, it was never the priority. So maybe it would have been more efficient if we were really targeting NOMAD as a, I would say, research project with collaborating with organizations specialized in building learning, etc., which were connections we didn't have that much at the time. Also, I think the field was less structured in general on these topics. Some networks like H2H were not existing back then. The main learning actors that we are more interacting with today, like iMMAP, etc., were already existing, but not really focused on technology and digital aspects back then. So we were kind of starting something on our own with not really the capacity internally to do it, and not really the strategy, I would say, to want to build it at the time. So it's something that I think CartONG has evolved with currently, like we are really strengthening this aspect of learning, researching, etc. And I think iMMAP is also progressing in this direction, but back then it was really not the priority with the competing priorities of being implementing and promoting MDC as a tool, really.
What I can certainly see from type of requests that we are still getting is that taking the decision on what could be a good tool depending on your situation, and this could be kind of technical decisions, it could be organizational decisions. I mean, it could be very many factors that actually come into play. Those type of support is still requested from us. Will help us to figure out what tool we should be using. So I do think the idea that you could be filtering somewhere and looking at a tool that actually helps you already to narrow it down to some of the tools could still be relevant, but you would really need to figure out a very good business model.
If you would like to do something similar, I would say yes. But again, now with the license levels of NOMAD, we'll go with a better business model, better thinking at the beginning, again to ensure the right funding to ensure that the project will be delivered until the end. To me, comparing inside the humanitarian world, what are the tools in place, not only for the mobile data collection, but for many other reasons, analysis software, visualization software, statistical software, monitoring and evaluation software. A lot of them are used from one organization to another one, from one crisis to another one, despite the goal and the effort of the international humanitarian community to standardize a little bit of that. There is still a lot of innovation, and innovation needs to stay there. So I think, yes, we should do something similar, but if we want to provide a services which is at the end of the day free for the user, we need to ensure that on the donors and the partner side, everybody wants to play the game from scratch. And for that, again, we need to have the right resources. That means the funding.